It's Just Business with Steve Thomas and your host, Chris Larry.
Hello and welcome to another episode of It's Just Business on the Hogstye Network, the show where we look at the dollars and cents of the sports, media, business, industrial complex, which we now sit in the pre-Super Bowl weekend, the sports, media, business annual Bacchanal this year held in, and at least was at one point thought of as the Bacchanal capital, or one of them of the world, maybe not as much anymore, Las Vegas. So lots going on, and we're gonna get this one out, so you're hopefully maybe listening to this before kickoff on Super Bowl to sort of stay relevant and not be stale on delivery. But how you doing today, Steve?
I'm doing all right, man. How about you? What's going on?
Not much. I love Super Bowl weekend. I'm looking forward to
have you made a lot of wagers on the game or anything?
No, not as of yet. I know what I think I have my plan. I'm still living off of my earnings on DraftKings from a Super Bowl 3 years ago. So now I might I put that money in one sum and I've flipped it forward for 3 years. This may be, I think I'm going to let all ride, which it's like $32 at this point, but I have not put in a cent in 3 years. I might let all of it ride on the Chiefs and just see where it lands.
That's a tough one, man. I mean, my official prediction was the Chiefs because I was forced to on the other show to make a prediction. It's a really, really close game. I think this is one of the closer games we've ever had in recent era, at least.
Yeah, which I think speaks to a Chiefs bet because as the slight underdog, a close game benefits them. But here's the thing that has me, I probably won't do it till like an hour and a half before kickoff. I usually wait. But there's so much action on the Chiefs. It almost makes me now, like, it makes me nervous. It's almost too much conventional wisdom on the Chiefs.
If there's that much action on the Chiefs, why are the odds Niners -2?
I'm not quite sure. There's some weirdness here because the line hasn't moved, but like the conventional, I don't know. There's some strangeness. It'll be kind of fun to watch from that angle how it plays out.
Yeah, I'm not a bettor, but I got somebody talked me into squares this year, so I have a few dollars on squares, which is a total game of chance. I don't even like doing that, but this is a good one. I talk about this on the hog side too, but so there was someone I work with who is convinced that Taylor Swift is going to play with Usher at the halftime show. And I was like, listen, that's just not a thing. That's not going to be a thing. And this is not a Swiftie. This is someone who's not in that generation, anything. She's older than you and I. And
it's a fun prediction, right? Like like a Hail Mary prediction.
No, but she was willing to lay down a bet on
that's insane. That's insane.
So now I've got lunch at a nice restaurant, bet, on Taylor, whether or not Taylor Swift will appear at Super. And I said, listen, I don't want to take your money, but you're the one that offered this. I'm happy to take a lunch, from you for this. No, she's going to do it. Okay.
No, well, enjoy your lunch, Steve, because exactly. I think there's no way. Although I did say when the Chiefs won the AFC Championship game, I did say I think I told my brothers or a few other people I was texting with that the biggest loser of that day was Usher, because it totally, but I don't think she's going to show up, but it totally from a musical, it totally makes him an afterthought. Even the people who think she's going to show up, there's no reality in that happens, but even just that out there in the ether kind of hamstrings his performance.
Well, yeah, I mean, and Usher was washed up in the first place.
Yeah,
okay?
I didn't quite get that one. Yeah.
Well, if you've noticed, the Jay-Z era of Super Bowl planning has had a string of washed up pop and R&B acts, if you've noticed this, which kind of fits with Jay-Z being a washed up rapper. Yeah,
It also fits that, generally they were just washed up classic rock acts often too. So
hold on, wait.
Steve.
hold on a minute. You're gonna sit there and look at me and call Tom Petty a washed up? Oh,
No, no,
oh,
I
now
love
I'm
Tom Petty.
offended.
No, no, I would not have put Tom Petty in that list. I would argue Tom Petty was relevant at that time. But like the Who with two of its living members in whatever the early 2000s, and I love the Who, but you could make the case that that was washed up.
You know, I was a bit disappointed. The one I was a bit disappointed in that I thought I would love was the Stones. I
Yeah,
thought
I
the
mean, come on.
Stones played a weird song. I can't remember what they played. They played one that was a bit off the beaten path, and they looked like they were kind of going through the motions. And I thought, man, you guys are the Rolling Stones. What are you doing? You know.
No, when we had Tom Petty and Prince within like about a 3 or 4 year stretch, like that's the nexus of megastar not yet washed up,
Well,
right?
Springsteen was in there too. Remember?
Yeah, he was a little long in the tooth, but I'll even give you that one. But what?
Yeah,
But washed up. I mean, it's a funny thing is, you know, Steve, I won't put words in your mouth, but you're probably old enough to remember this as well. That this, I mean, I can remember multiple Super Bowls where you watched Up with People choral group at
yeah.
halftime, and it
When
was
we were
like,
little kids, yeah,
yeah, it wasn't even pop music at all.
yeah. Now here's the thing. Why can't we get a little bit of diversity in the Super Bowl halftime show? I know why. It's because it's Jay-Z, but I like, for example, I'm not a country fan. I don't think you're a country fan either, particularly, but is there some reason why they couldn't put like Keith Urban up there or, or pick your country star like Dolly Parton at that Dallas Cowboy playoff game? She was great in the halftime. It's not my thing. It's not your thing, as far as I know. But that would be a great halftime show. Is there some reason why you couldn't put like some kind of like, I don't know, a jazz trio up there, maybe? Maybe that's a
Well,
bit
they're
too
not going to
subtle.
do that. They don't want
Maybe
to put
that's
everybody to sleep.
well, maybe, but you could get like a Broadway show up there to do something. You put Metallica up there one year. There's not Metallica's a touring stadium act. There's a whole lot of things in a lot of genres. Instead, we're stuck with rappers and R&B guys, and I just don't get it.
Well, I mean that is the dominant. You will see a pop. But listening public. I actually am a pretty giant country music fan, but not
Oh, I didn't realize you were a country music
not
fan. Okay,
whatever pop country is. But I
traditional.
would,
You like traditional country music?
yeah,
Oh, okay,
classic
fair
country,
enough.
whatever. Um, but I would predict you probably, even with a Jay Z running things, I predict you'll probably see a pop country megastar within the next 3 years.
He's shown no indication of it.
Um, yeah, but
How about AC/DC? Think about
but
that'd
come
be
on.
great.
There's one living member of ACDC.
No, there's two. Brian
Oh,
Johnson is
okay.
a legitimate vested member of AC/DC. He's
But can
also,
he
by the way,
can he sing though? I mean, he has no.
controversial opinion. He's better than Bon Scott ever was.
That is quite controversial. But
They're
but
about to tour. By the way, if you guys
with
haven't been
him or
thinking,
with a guest singer,
no,
which they've
with
done.
him. So, I this is courtesy of Eddie Trunk. Okay, I listen to Eddie Trunk in the mornings and stuff. I mean, he's on Sirius XM during the day, but I listen in the morning. Anyway, and AC/DC apparently has a countdown clock on their website that expires at midnight on Sunday night, meaning Monday morning. And so the thought process, they're going to announce a tour, according to Eddie Trunk, with Brian Johnson and Angus Young, and then two other guys, basically.
Listen, I love ACDC. No ill will towards ACDC. But to say that in 2024 or 2025, they wouldn't be considered washed up is a stretch.
Oh, come on. It hurts my soul to hear you
It's a
say that,
stretch.
okay?
We get old, Steve. I'm not.
I,
I can't fight. I can't fight Father Time.
I have never seen AC/DC in concert. I will move heaven and earth to go see AC/DC before they die, which might
Well,
happen soon.
it's a little bit different to go to the Houston Coliseum or whatever and the Super Bowl. Yeah, I would go. I would go see them at
They
Madison Square Garden.
You realize they have one of the maybe top five best-selling albums of all time, right?
Yeah,
You know
I
this.
I am not here to disparage ACDC. I'm just pointing out a harsh reality of the world we live in
If you can put
2025.
J-Lo on the halftime show, can't you put AC/DC also?
I would argue, especially after just watching her pretty horrendous Saturday Night Live appearance this past weekend, yes, I would consider J Lo washed up. I would put her in that camp.
I don't think she was and ever was. You have to fall down from something to be washed up. What did she
Well,
ever
no,
do in
she had mega hits, Steve. You could not
name
like them,
one?
but
Name
but
one.
there's yes, that Jenny Round the Block, and there's a I'm not going to
No,
be able to.
please.
You cannot like it. Doesn't mean it didn't sell.
Did it really though?
It
And
did, yes.
one song does not a career make. She's an actress dabbling in producer made music.
But yeah, I don't disagree with that. In fact, I think she actually harmed her career because she's a much more talented actress than she is
Yes, I'm
pop
not
singer.
disparaging her acting abilities.
Yes, but I've already called her washed up. Um,
I'm
I'm
just
just
saying
saying,
she
like
was
I
and
put her
never
in that camp.
was. That's all I'm saying. You have to
Well, I
have a
think
career to be
we
washed
could
up
break the.
from.
She had it from a sales perspective enough that she's had in 2 to 3 hits.
We're gonna have to fight over this. That's a but at a later day, but we're gonna have to rumble over this one. It'll
It's
be
just
the
sad.
Jennifer J. Lo versus AC/DC Royal Rumble.
I am on ACDC's side. I'm simply pointing out that from a Billboard perspective, yes, she had a few hits.
You're telling me that wouldn't be freaking awesome to have them at the halftime show?
Is it 1989, Steve?
No, it is 2024, and would it not be freaking awesome to see them up there playing Back in Black at the halftime show? Come on,
I don't know,
come
Steve.
with
I don't
me.
know.
That's got to be
the
better than Usher, for
the
Christ's
the
sake.
crutches and wheelchair set.
He said, "Are you going to discriminate based on age?" Yes, they're senior citizens.
Yes, I am. Um, I'll own it.
Boo.
Um, age matters. I'm on record as saying the same thing about Usher. By the way, as soon as they announced it, I said this makes no sense in 2024. So I'm
Nope.
on record as saying all of these things to me feel out of date.
Well, at least we agree on that point.
Um, all right, so there you go. So hopefully you're listening to this before you can judge if he comes out and crushes it. And is Steve gonna have to buy the soup and half sandwich special down at the lunch counter?
Oh, it's going to be better lunch than that.
So we'll see. I will be laughing mightily if Taylor walks out at
I
halftime
watched
though,
me lose. I know after I was so adamant about watching me lose.
I mean it's not impossible. Um, it highly improbable. Uh,
Usher's not going to want to have her show him up either on his own
No, that's
halftime
why I said
show.
the biggest
Yeah,
loser when
would
she's
be
made the Super Bowl
Usher.
was Usher.
Right.
Um, so all right, so Super Bowl, lots of things swirling. But if we look for themes in our show over time, and we've been doing this, it's like our 176th show for Pete's sake. Um, we've charted, it's so interesting, Steve. We've been doing this show so long that there's like the before times world. And we remember a before times world where gambling just isn't this central and we aren't celebrating our nation's chief bacchanal, the Super Bowl weekend in Las Vegas, and just how integrated, normal, matter of fact, not actually that interesting it actually is here. Talk
Yeah.
about out of date.
Well, we did a story on that Supreme Court opinion that
Right.
said that states couldn't ban gambling. Remember?
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
look how far we've come. So obviously, the Super Bowl is in Las Vegas, and I think one of the big angles, and CNBC probably has a great story on this, and it's about how far Las Vegas has come and how far the NFL has come to go from a league in which they gambling was considered sacrosanct, meaning you don't touch it, to and we're having no professional sports in Las Vegas at all, to having almost every major sports league has a plan to have a team in Las Vegas. I think the NBA is now the only one who does not. And they've done
Soon
the
to be
pre
rectified, I'm sure.
yeah, and they've done the draft there, and like the NBA combine, all kinds of stuff. But the NFL in particular has gone from 0 to 100 on this. And so one story here is CNBC by Natalie Rice. Las Vegas has invested billions in sports. Question is, will it pay off? This is published February 8th on CNBC, as I said. Now, it mentions here that they've put, $2.3 billion into the F1, the Formula One race we talked about here. They built Allegiant Stadium. That's $2 billion, 65,000 people. And Allegiant Stadium, according to this column, has done fabulously in entertainment too. They've had all kinds of events, at this thing like 50 a year. which is a lot. What recall that I think Dan Snyder and Jason Wright said something about 200 events a year at the hypothetical Redskins stadium, which is crazy and ridiculous. This is more along Allegiant Stadium is going to get all of them, and they've got 50. So just bear that in mind. Um, but it says it's brought 1.52 million visitors into the area alone in 2023. And that's on top of the visitors who are already there. So NFL though, if you go think back and then to where we are now, now the NFL is embracing its relationship with Las Vegas and with gambling. And I mean, it opens up a bunch of questions to me, and it opens the NFL up to an argument that the game is not as above board as it used to be. I'm not suggesting it isn't. I'm saying they're opening themselves up to the argument.
Oh, 100%, 100% that they opened up themselves to the argument. I think, but at this point, everyone has made the calculated risk assessment that it's like a store. You're willing to accept whatever, 10% of theft or whatever, right? Like, if you can keep it within a range of norm, then that's part of your risk assessment of how much scandal or fallout, right? Like, that's just, they know by going this deep into it that some of that will happen. Um, it's just a matter of course now, right? It's sort of non-remarkable. It's like if you kind of take a pause and think about it and think about how far we've come in a short amount of time. I mean, I think that Supreme Court ruling is what, 4 years old,
Something
something in
like
that
that.
name.
Yeah, three
Yeah.
years maybe. Yeah.
So, and you just say, wow, that's a fast pace for something that previously was in place for decades and decades, right? Um, I was just there's a casino near my place in the Catskills, and I needed to go there basically to use their shower because I want to take a warm shower. So I paid for their pool pass. Um, and I didn't even realize this. There's a full sports book in there, full sports book, bar, TVs, the tickets, the counter, the whole nine. Like,
It
we're,
surprised me.
it doesn't surprise me either, but it was sort of like sitting there looking at it was just, the construction, the capital project, everything to get to where 4 or 5 years ago that was impossible, right? You went to Vegas to do that. Even past regular where there'd be casinos, sports books, sports gambling was, even in that world, was still pretty much regulated to Las Vegas. And now, everywhere.
Now, do you want to tell the audience why you were homeless to the point you needed to take a shower in a casino?
Yeah,
Or
because
do
I
you
had
want to
no
move
hot
that on?
water. I had
Oh,
no hot water.
I was just
Yeah.
curious. I mean, did you
No,
lose
it
your
wasn't.
job? Are you under a bridge now? What?
Although I did have that kind of self-reflection as I walked in. I hadn't showered. I was in my full bearded mountain man look. And as I walked into this pseudo shishi spa at the casino and said, oh, I think I said, do you have a toothbrush or something like that? Like, they must have said, has this guy, I figured, did they think that this guy scrounged together the $40 to take his monthly shower or whatever? So I was like, no, I'm a legitimate person. So
It's just
I did
funny.
have that moment of reflection. Yes, that I would seem I could appear homeless. Um,
Well, so the same CNBC site had a video interview with the CEO of DraftKings this week, and I can't remember his name to be honest, and I don't want to hit play to figure it out here during the show, but um, he was talking about the impact of the Super Bowl on DraftKings and how that it's their biggest day of the year by far. Um, but one thing I didn't realize is they don't even have a gambling license in Nevada, DraftKings, which blew my mind. How can DraftKings not even have a license to operate in Nevada? They don't have any hard facility, sportsbook facility in Nevada at all. I guess it's just online. But again, like DraftKings is what, maybe 10 years old, do you think? Something like that. It started out as a fantasy football site and it's become, I don't quote me on the numbers, but one of the biggest sports betting operations in the world,
yeah,
Um,
I would guess or
but their
close.
sponsors,
Jason Robbins, by the way, is the
okay,
CEO.
there you go, Jason Robins. But point is, it's gone from the point where the NFL was afraid of all gambling because of the potential possible perception that the game is corrupt to having a Super Bowl in Las Vegas, having DraftKings as a major NFL sponsor, having bet the it's the biggest betting day of the year. And there's even rules. I saw rules for, what players can and can't do in Vegas. And, they can bet, but they can't do it in a team facility. I mean, there's rules like that to where they've compromised their rules to accept the reality that gambling is way, way, for whether you like it or not, way, way, way more ingrained in our society than it ever was.
Yeah, or at least it's a acknowledged thing rather than a
Yeah, right.
back
It's not in the
alley
back
thing.
of and listen, I mean, I'm fine with it. Okay. I mean, Mr. Conservative here on the show, but you do you, people. If you want to spend your money on it, that's what freedom's all about. I just find it interesting that how far we've come in even a decade.
Yeah, totally. I don't disagree with that at all. I'd say even 5 years. And this the CNBC article, says about Vegas and their kind of bet on this sports and kind of expanded image. Really, is it worth it? And quite frankly, there's not anything in the article with that article that would suggest that it hasn't been.
No, that was the
One,
theme of the article.
yeah,
That it's paid off, and think about, the city planners for Vegas have been geniuses. They've allowed the sphere to be built, the sphere which has been revolutionary. I've not been there. I do know someone who did go, but it's been revolutionary in their presentation of live entertainment in that place, to having the Super Bowl in the same year. The city has to allow all this stuff. Yes, there's developers that put it out, but the city plant, believe me, the city's intimately involved. And they had a massive F1 event. They had the Sphere Open. Now they have the Super Bowl. It is Las Vegas's world this year, and we're all just living in it.
and where I think, yeah, I agree. Like, town elders, plan these things at decades out, right? This is longitudinal planning. But one thing I think that was real, they were really prescient about is they knew that their kind of brand and hold on Sin City was going to be withered away, right? Like they had to reinvent themselves. So like if 6 years ago the only place that you could legally put a bet on sports was there, but now it's everywhere, and you can say casinos and gambling at large, they knew that there, if that was the only thing that they were known for, then they would just become one of many. And so, but they also knew they couldn't completely change their identity. So like the full embrace, and again, the Sphere is a great non-sports example. Their full embrace of entertainment mecca, diversify those things, expand. They leveraged the parts of their reputation they wanted to carry forward. The reality of their reputation is still there. It's not you can't do that thing, but they don't have to be known for just that in a world where you can do that from your phone.
Well, they used to just be known for the place you could go to gamble and then get involved in some seedy adult entertainment, possibly, and there were some like collateral shows associated with that. And if you notice, what Las Vegas has done is they're not branding themselves as the gambling capital of the world like they were kind of unintentionally known for. Now they're the entertainment capital of the world. And they're almost minimizing the gambling aspect of it, because they really want, I think what they're trying to do is grow the market to allow families to come and enjoy the Las Vegas, because they don't talk about really gambling that much anymore. It's entertainment. It's, this event, it's the Sphere, and it's the this and that. It's not, come play poker anymore. And that's what it used to be, or come play poker and hire a prostitute on the street, which is what it used to be. And so I do think it's some pretty, quality planning by people who are taking a long-term look at things, because like you said, with that Supreme Court opinion that came out, if it had just been gambling, that's going to be all over, and Las Vegas would have lost its influence. But instead, they've set themselves up for a generation.
One kind of weird counterintuitive metric for this success that I picked up this week, a lot of, if you consume sports media content, obviously this is the big theme this week is Super Bowl, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a lot of people, whether it's Radio Row, whatever, different people being down there, ex-players, media members, et cetera. And so there's always the question is like, oh, how insane is it in Las Vegas for the Super Bowl? And most people are like, That's pretty normal, like these are people that have been to many Super Bowls. It's pretty much like any giant city hosts a Super Bowl. Like they hit their beats and there's the parties and the yada yadas and all that stuff. But it felt like this could have been LA or it could have been, Miami or any of these places that sort of host them semi regularly. And that's kind of success metric for Vegas, right? Like because people are like, oh, the combination of Vegas and the Super Bowl must just be insane. We're like, no, actually, it's just kind of like par for the course, which kind of is a way cements them as legitimate.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Have you ever been in a Super Bowl city during the Super Bowl?
I mean, I guess technically yes, because I was living in New York City when the one New York
Oh, you did.
Super
Okay, so
Bowl.
you've seen it to a certain extent then.
Yeah, but considering the game is out in New Jersey and you can exist in New York City and not be in Manhattan and not, it won't, no part of your life is different.
So I represented a Super Bowl host committee and in the city. And so I have seen all of that firsthand. And just so people understand how this works, for those of you who aren't involved in this world, the Super Bowl, they're planning these things years in advance. There's a guy at the NFL, Jim Steig was the guy I dealt with. He's retired now, but there's a Mr. Super Bowl guy, and his whole sole job is to do, and he's doing them like 5 years in advance. And there's local teams that plan this, but when you get to the Super Bowl week, it really starts the week before with a few events and stuff. But once you get to about Tuesday before the Super Bowl, it's a major, major corporate sponsor thing. And so there are all these events going on every night, even during the day, all of this leading up to the game. The game is almost the denouement of the event because it's everything kind of ends and then the game happens. A lot of people come in to do the sponsor stuff and then leave before they even get to the game. And that is so a city, when you're in it, the city really changes for the people who are involved in it and all. And what you're saying is a good point, which is Las Vegas could pull that off and look like just a normal Super Bowl city. That is a win for Las Vegas because Las Vegas has a potential to go horribly wrong. Are they flying in hookers from Paris? I mean, I don't know, probably, but point is, it didn't turn into that. It was just been just a regular Super Bowl week, and I think that's a win. And I think that's what you were saying, basically.
Yeah, if they can escape without, player DUIs or some like
Yeah,
ex
this
player losing
the
a ton at the
safety for
casino,
the
all kinds of
Chiefs got
stories.
busted with 8 prostitutes and in a drug den or so. I mean, none of that has happened so far.
In fact, the biggest example of it not being ready is actually, strangely, this issue about the disparity between the practice locations. If you've been following this
Mm,
story,
no.
so the Chiefs are at the Raiders practice facility, which is brand new, right? And I'm sure it's great. Everyone says it's great. It's new, blah, blah, blah. The 49ers are out at UNLV's trashy football facilities. Not, I mean, like you can, I mean, they're not even mid-level college football program, like lower tier. So you can imagine the difference between the Raiders' brand new NFL facilities and UNLV's, also ran third place, fourth place, 15th place finisher
This is pretty normal
football.
though. The one I worked had the same problem. It's like one of the teams was in the local NFL team's facilities and the other team was somewhere else. And I mean that is they only in New York and New Jersey or San Francisco can you not have that problem.
Right. So that, but
Or
though
LA.
that it's pretty fascinating. If you want to track the bizarre conspiracy theories about the outcome of the Super Bowl, the fact that San Francisco is stuck at the worst facility, and did you hear this too? Got a middle of the night fake fire alarm pull.
No, but that's happened. That kind of thing's happened
I
before
know,
though.
but I'm just saying if you're looking, like it's just kind of funny that like the NFL's already kind of battling some of these like rigged things, and the 49ers are totally got the narrative of the like we were the ones that were put out.
I did read, I thought that, see, usually how it works is they will put these teams in one hotel for the first like 6 or 7 days, and then like Friday they'll move them to another hotel to like right pregame. And I think usually they're separate hotels, but I guess they were in the same hotel, let's say at the same resort.
Oh,
in
really?
in the early part of the week. Yeah.
That is pretty weird.
Yeah, it is.
Um, so the other thing we get, every Super Bowl time is we get a little bit of Roger Goodell, speaking publicly. Um, and he spoke a lot about gambling. That was a big theme, obviously, similar to what we're talking about. Um, let's pick out a few little newsy things about the press conference, or at least some of the things the NFL has announced this week. One, you mentioned this already, Steve, and he reiterated it. And there's a good athletic article that reiterates it. There's pretty lockdown rules for the players, and I'll show my small C conservative uh, view.
I knew you'd come around.
I said small C. In that, in that, I this idea that this is some kind of unfairness to these players that they have their gambling restricted to this degree, I find laughable. Of course you're going to be on lockdown. You're all responsible for not strangling the golden goose. Like so and these people that sit on the side of that, they should be allowed to gamble too, I just find insane. But they are pretty locked down, I think, for all of the right reasons, including like even limiting, like even just their, baccarat playing or whatever, roulette playing is pretty locked down. But I have zero sympathy for an active NFL player having to follow those gambling rules.
Oh yeah, boo-hoo. Listen, I mean, Chris and I come around a little bit. We're diametrically opposed on a lot of views. But we come around a little bit on individual freedoms, and I get it, But in this case, we're talking about very highly paid professional athletes in the biggest event of the world, and in a league that is doing everything to um, keep away from desperately keep people from thinking that the league is corrupt with gambling. And so then you're going to cry about having players that, by the way, are going to have 3 months off here with nothing to do from gambling a little bit, from being able to gamble for, 10 days in Las Vegas. That, world's smallest violin is playing for them about this. They want to gamble, they can gamble to their heart's content from, um, uh, you know, uh, February 12th through the end of July, and they'll be fine. So no, I have no sympathy for that at all. That's ridiculous. But the rules, I don't have them in front of me, but you saw the same thing I did, Chris. But it was
I think I
very
have,
specific.
yeah.
Okay, they're very specific. If you can find them, let's hear them because it was very specific.
Well, the
Okay, well,
two
oh, yeah, you
the
got them.
two
Okay,
members, the Chiefs and the 49ers, are prohibited from participating in any form of gambling, including casino games on betting on any sport. So that's not even
but there were some rules about they can't go in a casino. They can go through a sports book if they're trying to get to another place in the building. They can't
yes, there's
go
all
into
kinds of.
Yeah, they can't play casino games while they're there. And again, I mean, cry me a river over this. I promise they'll be fine. They can roll in their millions and go gamble any other time of the year. So boohoo. I
Right.
agree there.
How is it, they have a guaranteed way to win millions of dollars. You know what that is?
Win the
Behave
game.
themselves for 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
you're guaranteed to win,
I mean, think about it. This is a work trip. We've all been on work trips. Chris goes on a lot of them, me a lot less than Chris, but you're working during this week. You can't just go goof off.
No.
I realize some people, probably the younger set who, the college kids who haven't lived a professional life yet, every trip you go on is a big party, but that's not what the reality. I got news for you. When you're working, you're working. Yeah, you'll have a couple hours off in the evening or whatever, but you got to work and you can't just go rage all night long in Las Vegas and be ready to play a football game.
Know the boundaries and you'll have a good time.
Yes.
Another interesting thing that
But
came
go
out.
back to the Goodell presser though.
Oh, I am.
Okay, go ahead.
One other little like newsy bit, and then we'll talk about like how the presser kind of created some newsy bits in and of itself. But I did laugh about this idea that, Goodell attacks this. I know he was asked a question, but you still don't need to attack the straw man quite so vigorously about this idea that the Super Bowl would be going to streaming, and he, does the kind of pound the podium, not under my watch, will the Super Bowl go to streaming only? And it's like, dude, duh, like
Yeah, I thought it was a bit of an odd reaction. I mean, obviously the NFL is going to put the Super Bowl in streaming only because they have massive, humongous ratings on network television. It's the most watched television programs of all time is the season finale, the series finale of MASH, and then all the Super Bowls. Those
and they're already
are,
had their cake and eat it too. It's already streaming and broadcast. Like,
yeah,
why
that's what
would
I'm
you want to
saying.
give anything back?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and these networks are paying literally billions of dollars to be able to broadcast it. And so all he needed to say was, no, I mean, we're happy with what it is. The networks have the rights to him. The end. It's not like we're asking him to compromise his principles and
Yeah,
I'm not buying an electric vehicle. I hate those damn things. And we're talking about common sense here. I thought that was a kind of a strange react. Not on he literally the quote is something like not on my watch.
yeah.
I mean, it's kind of silly.
Also, by the time that's even, yes, eventually that probably happens because there won't be broadcast. It's not because they won't put it on something that's called broadcast. And guess what? Goodell's long past retired, if not dead. So, like, this,
Okay, so I found the story. So this is Bleacher Report. NFL's Roger Goodell rejects idea of streaming only Super Bowl.
rejects.
Yeah, Tyler Conway, February 6th. And the quote was certainly not in my time. This from the story. One of the secrets of our success is we are really committed to broadcast television. 90% of our games are on broadcast television. I think it's the reason why you will see over 200 million people watch this game here in the United States because it's on broadcast television and the broadest possible platform. We'll see the Super Bowl continue to be on the broadest possible platform, and I think we'll continue to see the NFL on the broadest possible. You notice how I keep saying broadest and broadcast over and over and over again? It's this may be one thing that where it comes across as a little bit more harsh on in the print than it did live because I haven't seen the video of this, but it seems like in a bit of an overreaction. But if you put it in context, it may be just Roger being Roger a little bit. But
Yeah,
that's the quote.
probably. And also, so that also is kind of an interesting part here is that we saw and heard less of Roger this year because, his annual, press conference, kind of is one of his moments of the year where he kind of addresses where the NFL's at, maybe not as highfalutin as a kind of state of the union type thing, but one of those like updates on the shield, so to speak, is during Super Bowl week in his press conference. But this year, they moved it from later in the week when everyone's there, right? Everyone's lathered up Thursday, Friday, which I think is normally when they would have it. They moved it all the way to Monday. They made it invite only and kind of structured the questions. It basically went more from a like, here's my talking points than answering questions. And the questions and the people were certainly curated into that room. It was remarkable, and they took a lot of grief for it. A lot of people were like, "Well, you don't say anything in those meetings anyway, so why are you kind of creating a story by being even extra cautious?" Which I find is an interesting take, but I'm certainly not surprised that they hide behind the shield as much as possible. But people were caught off guard. To move from Thursday to Monday of Super Bowl week is a choice.
Yeah, why does he have to have a press conference in the first place? This is not the president of the United States, talking about declaring war on the enemy or possibly, talking about how the president of Mexico opened up the border of Israel. But that's another story entirely. But the point is, if you don't want to do a press conference, don't do a press conference. It's not that important. If you're trying to keep Roger Goodell from stumbling all over himself or whatever the reason is, just don't do it. You don't have to. I don't know why. What is the big deal about his press conference? I do. And by just say, we cancel it this year. The end of story. Like by moving it to Monday, I think it almost created more news than it helped. He could have got out there on like a Thursday and just babbled for 30 minutes, and he wouldn't have said anything, and no one would have been wiser. And there's not a specific story right now that the NFL is trying to hide, other than just generally they're trying to convince people that it's okay that they're in Vegas, but there's not like there's a scandal going on he can't talk about. So I didn't really understand it. And Goodell is one of the most trained media savvy people around. His entire job is to defend the shield. If you want to summarize it in a sentence, that is his job. So I thought it was weird. And again, if you don't want to do it, just cancel it. Nobody would have cared.
I think the issue with it is for him is that Goodell, he has been willing. I think most analysis would say that one of his strengths of being that defender of the shield is his willingness to sort of be out front. And he likes it. He likes the spotlight. Like if you contrast him to someone like Paul Tagliabue, wasn't really like, out there. Goodell likes to be out there. He likes to be the face of the league. And
Or either
I'd
that or
actually
he
say,
realizes that his job in the modern
right.
world requires it.
And so, yes, he has to play the buffoon sometimes, right? Or be that public punching bag. So, and probably a combination of both. Um, so that's where I think he loses some face. The big reason people expect these things is because he's usually been out there doing it. He is the one that establishes more press conferences. He's the one that established more public face. So he's
I'm
the one
just
that
saying,
established that norm.
I'm just saying, but if it's a problem, just skip it. Would anybody care? Just how many of the NFL watching public even knew that Roger Goodell did a press conference during Super Bowl week? The media knows, and the media can go jump in the lake for the most part, as far as I'm concerned. But like the average public person, I bet you he or she would not even realize that Roger Goodell had an annual press conference.
I think the NFL fan knows.
I don't know, really. I mean, you and I are much more savvy than the average person on the street who's just like, a Bears fan or whatever, and they're going to turn the game on at 5 o'clock on Sunday, and that's it,
I
you
think
know.
sometimes well, it depends what news comes. And I don't think this, actually, I can't, I don't know either way. So apologies. But, did Goodell also announce like stuff like the Madrid move, or did that come out as a press release a couple
I
days
don't think
later?
that he talked about that in this press conference.
Yeah, I don't think so either. So there are newsy bits I think that come out of this week, right? It's not an accident that we get those kinds of, the Pro Football Player Hall of Fame announcements, forward looking things like new countries that they're going to go to. These things are planned for Super Bowl week. So you could make the argument that, he would be carrying this forward. I think the thing, Steve, I think one of the reasons they moved from Thursday to Monday in terms of what might be a news part, and it didn't make as big a splash as maybe they thought it was, or I thought it would, or whatever. But the CTE stuff that came out these last couple of weeks, I could see them trying to not have that be a Thursday, Friday narrative going into Super Bowl weekend, and rather if that was, a bit of a drumbeat. And the Jim Trotter stuff came from this press conference. So they do have, there are wounds.
So to have everybody recall the Jim Trotter stuff, Jim Trotter is suing the NFL. He was with
Network,
NFL
yeah.
Network, and he asked Roger Goodell a question, something to the effect of something about racial discrimination in coaching hiring practices. And then he got fired. It's now he is suing the NFL for a racial discrimination in employment, an employment lawsuit. So that's the Jim Trotter stuff. So are they afraid of that? I mean, Goodell is skilled at dodging those kind of questions. So, I don't remember what his answer was for the Trotter question, but he's not going to say anything to anybody, that's of any substance whatsoever. By the way, there's some numbers I wanted to, before I forget, this Bleacher Report column had some good numbers. Remember the Peacock streaming only playoff game, 23 million viewers, which is a ton. Um, the Thursday night football this year from Amazon only averaged 11.86 million, which is 24% increase over last year's, which was not streaming only. The Super Bowl last year, 112.17 million viewers. So which is, I mean, there's no way you can get 112 million viewers on any streaming platform anywhere. That's just not a thing. 112 million people do not have Peacock or name your streaming service. It has to be on a free broadcast network only.
Yes,
Not
of
only,
course.
but yeah.
Yeah. And then and now it's being basically strung to all those streamers. You can, so those, then you're just adding tens of millions of people. You're not cutting into, this is where the cord cutting is, people's reaction to cord cutting is probably becoming an overreaction to still how dominant broadcast or over the airwaves
Well, it's kind
television
of a
still
first world
dominates.
problem, right? There's a lot of people out there in the world, in the United States, who are lower income people who their life does not revolve around how many streaming services that they subscribe to. That is a problem for people who have money,
Yeah.
or like middle income and up, worry about those kind of things.
Speaking of seismic shifts in how you would consume TV, which I also don't think was an accident that this news came in and around Super Bowl frenzy, was that kind of a massive deal was announced this past week that sees Disney under the corporate header of ESPN, Fox Sports or Fox Company, and Warner Discoveries, which, if you're thinking about the app, you'd call Max, um, come together to join their sports licensing rights and build one platform where you could get all that content. It will be its singular company. It will have its own CEO. But you will get you by buying their what they're calling the skinny bundle. So basically a direct to consumer bundled sports package of all of the licensing rights that fall under those three companies. The only ones that this really excludes, which I have some theories about later, are Peacock and Paramount, so old school NBC and old school CBS, essentially. Other than that, this is pretty much will be a package that I think for probably between 50 and $75, with some of the estimates fall in. Um, you'll pay and you'll get one-stop shopping for all that content. Not only will you get one-stop shopping, but then that content will then be, as I sort of talked about actually in the last show, which is already happening, will then also be spread out to wherever you access that. So like you can probably get those games at Hulu or ESPN Plus too, right? Because, and they might drive you towards that mothership package, but it means that all that content has a central location and spiders out into all those side streams as well. This is a pretty massive deal.
Oh yeah, I think it is. And just so people understand, so what Warner Discovery is the old Time Warner was bought by AT&T, and then AT&T divested itself of interest in Discovery, which is the Discovery Network, or which is
Oh no,
Discovery, which owned.
Discovery was already independent of
I-
Time Warner.
No, I
Yeah,
know. What I'm
yeah.
saying is they brought Discovery in as an investor, and so Warner Brothers Discovery is kind of the remnants, the new creation, the spawn of the AT&T ownership of Time Warner, and then the Discovery Network, which is Discovery Channel and some other channels and stuff. And that is what Warner Brothers Discovery is. And so, a couple things. One, this has been advertised as an ESPN product, not Disney. Um, and Disney doesn't have any other sports but ESPN, but I'm saying it's limited to that. But um, I think that carves out ABC is where I was going with that. So it doesn't say in here all Disney brands. It says ESPN, so that may carve out whatever rights ABC has exclusive to ABC. But yeah, so Warner Brothers is going to include TNT. So you've got all of the significant amount of the NBA games. I don't know if TBS. Do you know if TBS is under Warner
It is,
Discovery?
yeah.
Okay, so
Any
you've got
anything that was Turner.
okay, so and because Time Warner was Turner Broadcast was TBS and TNT. Um, so you've got between that and ESPN, you've got virtually all of the NBA products. You've got Fox's part in the NFL and ESPN's Monday Night Football. Um, and you've got and ESPN has some baseball, not a ton. Fox has some baseball, not a ton.
So
So
there's the
you've
Turner. Turner still has some
Turner has
baseball
some
too.
baseball, and TBS has got all the Atlanta Braves stuff. So you've got a massive percentage of the live sports, American live sports that people care about under this umbrella. So I do agree with you. I'm not normally one to tout, the latest streaming platform. I'm kind of old school in that regard, but I think that this one is a massive seismic shift here that I don't know what NBC and CBS think but about it, but this is the one everybody's going to have. And this is what Disney wanted, by the way, to make some money somewhere. They needed to do something. Disney's been talking about trying to divest itself or expand the investments into ESPN because the Disney's losing a truckload of money everywhere, and so they need to make money. So this is a way here for Disney to make some money too. So I
It's
think this
the
is
first
seismic
major
shift.
win of Bob Iger's return.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, there's been all the moves have busted, the theme, all of that, but this is a major deal. So how do
And
you go ahead?
and stuff that we've already talked about does not mean it's off the table. These articles, and there's all kinds of articles. We looked at the Athletic, we looked at CNBC. I mean, they're all saying the same thing. But um, things like the ESPN, Disney still making a play at taking over the NFL network. Those things aren't off the table. In fact, they're probably strengthened by this move.
Absolutely, because you have
Yeah.
a huge platform.
So, and
How do you,
my prediction was, remember, that we'd see some mergers. This forces Peacock and Paramount to have to consider
well, I'll go you
merging with
one
one of these
further. You
three.
said when your predictions was specifically something to do with Warner Discovery.
And
That was
Paramount
your,
yet.
yeah, right. I mean, you missed the Paramount, but you were right in the Warner Discovery part of it. So what I wonder here is what is going to be the reaction of NBC and CBS to this? Would they try to get, could you foresee some sort of merger of their sports interest
Or
in
they
some of
buy
the
in. You don't even have to, right? Because like you could just like
license
take the
their
deal.
content over?
Yeah. I mean, so like the structure's there. That if you this reminds me of a lot, and it's not what they do anymore, but when Hulu first came about, it was a partnership, I think, between Fox, CBS, and NBC to license their content to this sort of like sub but separate brand, so that if you could go on the usually a day later and you could access network shows from those three networks via Hulu. That's what Hulu was invented. Now it's obviously changed and all that, but it was these big behemoth networks putting a significant foot forward in shared content for new licensing fees. And this is essentially repeating itself right here, because none of these networks have to go full hog into this, right? They can, and it's kind of a low risk, high reward move on their part. And we've talked about, another thing we've talked about the whole time in the show is how we're really just reinventing cable. But one thing I realize is we're actually reinventing cable better, even a little bit for the consumer, right? The more like before, if you wanted to get the Uber sports package via your hometown cable company, you still had to have cable, right? You still had to have tons of channels to get the sports channels you want. You don't watch anything else. You still had to buy Hall cable. Well, now you can get that behemoth buffet of sports content and not have to feel like you're paying for MTV or CNN or other these things. And there's no cable, there's no wire. It's on your phone. It's in the air. It follows you to when you travel. So in a way, yes, they're rebuilding cable, but they're kind of rebuilding cable in a lot of the ways that made cable. They're improving cable, which, and I'm usually pretty cynical, but like if you think about it, they're kind of fixing the things that people hated about cable.
Yeah, to a certain extent. I think you alluded to this a second ago. I want to expand on it, but this merger is a bit of a low risk, high reward thing because they already all these entities already have the licenses to broadcast all of these things. Time Warner or Warner Discovery has the NBA. Fox already has the NFL, et cetera, et cetera. And all they're really doing is merging those interests together at no extra added cost other than whatever it costs to build out the network.
They're just
Uh,
remonetizing stuff they've already monetized.
yeah, exactly right. Because a lot of people are going to have access to ESPN on cable television, or they'll have ESPN Plus or whatever now, and now they're going to have people buy this too. So I think it's a win-win. I think this is probably going to be the dominant streaming package in America rapidly. It depends on the cost point, everything, of course. And I don't know. Did you see any cost points on this yet? I don't
The
think they've gotten
estimate, the
that far.
low end would be, if yeah, a couple analysts, looking at where they think this would go. The low end, the floor is 45 and the ceiling is 75.
Per
And there could
monthly?
be versions, it could be, there could be all, tiers within the sports package, like who knows? But and those were just guesses right there.
That was like monthly or annually?
Annually.
Okay, because if that was monthly, I mean, I would stick to. I mean, I have cable television. I don't need all this.
Right.
But an annual package, that's not a lot. It could be worthwhile even for someone like me. I'm an anachronism, as Chris knows, when it comes to broadcast stuff. I think it's very smart. And so then the question to me becomes, does this entity bid on sports packages in and of itself?
Right. Setting up its own entity sort of
Right.
suggests maybe.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And so then if then you're really, really talking about domination of the sports market at that point then.
And they talked a little bit, the long tail when which is that theory that when you have digital stock, you're you don't need to worry about how you're storing things, and you can sell things that are down the chain of interest. Smaller niche things become a viable market. And the interesting tell in these articles is they talk about that there might be smaller acquisitions by this entity. They talked about things like the tennis channel and the golf channel, and then the variety of licensing things. Suddenly, this becomes a sticky, you can imagine a place for those kind of like mid-tier and niche sports, but they join this package, and that's a real value add, and they can make money off things like a tennis channel being part of the package. That'll bring in users. They have their own licensing deals for, where there will be still an audience for, and especially if you're, and the articles already hint that this might start a bit of a buying spree about some of these small or mid-tier niche things and add them to the package, and then capture all kinds of licensing rights. And then you think about what global interest in sports are, that opens up new markets for sports we don't care about in America, but you pick up their licensing rights, and you can then that looks like Netflix. It doesn't look like an American broadcast company.
Yeah, yeah. No, but did we? I don't think we gave a story on site on this. There's been a lot of media on this, but one of them that I saw here is CNBC again. ESPN, Fox, and Warner Brothers Discovery to launch sports streaming platform this year by Alex Sherman and Jacob Bramick, I guess, dated the updated last on the 7th of February. So that is that. Um, I'm kind of curious as to where the term skinny bundle comes from when it seems to be the opposite of a skinny bundle. Seems to be more like a very broad-based bundle. I don't
I
get that
think
part.
I think they're trying to differentiate between two things. One, cable, where you have to, as I said earlier, even to have the opportunity to buy like a special package, you have to take the whole thing. So they want to differentiate themselves from like, oh, I want ESPN and I got to pay for all of cable. So, and I think, I think it's a play on the Disney bundle, which is Hulu, ESPN Plus, and Disney Channel, and which again is like, well, if you want sports content, suddenly I've got to deal with Disney princesses or whatever, right? So I think they're trying to. I think it's just their
Meaning
way
just
to
sports only
market
is the skinny
just
part.
sports all. Yeah, yeah, and basically for if you hate all entertainment but sports and you hate subsidizing that entertainment, now you don't have to.
Yeah, maybe that's it because in my world it seems big, but that may be true. And as a matter of fact, this headline here on the story says the product will be a skinnier bundle of linear networks than a standard cable offering specifically tailored to sports. And so yeah, obviously that's it. So you're right there. Um, so okay.
Oh, can I just one
Yeah,
also
go
an
ahead.
article that we looked at was the Athletic article, which was called ESPN, Fox, Warner, Discovery launch, yada yada. But a small little mini sports business story that's embedded in the byline is that this was a group article. Richard Deitch is their main sports media writer at the Athletic, was the lead writer. But you will see in the byline one Andrew Marchand, who just earlier this past week jumped from the New York Post to the Athletic, and that's after his old podcast partner John Olrand jumped from Sports Business Journal to, oh, what's it called, the I can't remember, the Puck News. So that's a pretty big. So the two biggest sports media business journalists have changed jobs in the last 3 weeks, and it has killed their very popular podcast because they no longer work for the parent companies that run that podcast. So it's kind of funny, but yeah. So Andrew Marchand, if you're following at home, is now at the Athletic.
Remember we did at least one story a couple years ago about how Athletic was drowning in debt. Remember, they had a
Well,
bunch of
the New
cap.
York Times saved them.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
Forget I said that. I forgot about that. I mean, and it doesn't look like the New York Times has really done much with the connection other than they just own it. I haven't seen, you're in New York.
Well, they have one, all of the subscriptions are integrated now. So if you get the New York Times, the Athletic, you get the Athletic, the New York Times. So from a business sales packaging, they have, and there's actually a good amount of tension locally in New York between the New York Times sports writers, which New York Times sports page has always been a joke. So whatever to some degree, but apparently there is a good, like there's some weird dividing lines and tensions, and there were internal issues between like who is the official sports department, yada yada. But yeah, it's basically the global sports page for the New York Times media conglomerate.
Are you telling me that the Hogstye subscription to the Athletic is allowing us to access a rag like the New York Times? I'm bitterly disappointed in myself. We may have to
That
cancel
is
our athletics subscription.
that is exactly what I'm telling you.
Oh, that's disappointing. Wait, that's it. Where the Hogstye is going to get out of the athletic business. I refuse to support the New York Times. No, but seriously, so I don't know what else to say about this other than I think it's going to be the biggest sports package in the world by far. I think this is going to dwarf ESPN Plus, all of it. I think this will be the sports page of record, if you will, for American sports.
And I actually think it strengthens those brands, right? Like
Yeah.
because you're still gonna want to differentiate if in the bundle, you're still gonna be fighting for eyeballs between ESPN and like Fox Sports One.
There's
It
still going
actually,
to be the commercials and the broadcasts,
yeah.
everything.
So
Yeah.
like it almost makes them it almost puts them a little bit more in direct competition, right? Because there'll be some eventually, if this is successful, there'll be some collapsing of brands within that too, because we don't need 32, sports center type shows on. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of what competition happens within the circle.
I mean, I guess you're right in that it's sort of cable TV for sports, more or less.
Yeah, right. Without cables and without paying for Disney princesses and VH1.
Yeah, or Fox shows or whatever else you may want or not want. Yeah.
Yeah. So, when do you predict that you will be able to engage with this by kickoff of the 2024 NFL season?
If
Like,
they were
will it be
smart, they
ready
would
for
make
sales by then?
I do not know. I don't think so. Well, I think that would be the goal because the NFL kickoff is a huge event, obviously. And so if you're going to set a marker for that, you would want to. But they just announced this merger this week, or this agreement this week. I mean, can they build the infrastructure in 8 months? That's really tough to think that they can. So I don't know. I would maybe say no.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I'm sure there's some aggressive timeline that has that as a goal because you just have very few point of sale opportunities like that would give you
Right.
to buy in.
That's what you
Um,
would want because you would want to get everybody hooked on it right before the NFL season so they get the benefit of the entire season. And basketball comes right after that.
yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what YouTube does with their.
Well, that's what I was
It,
going to say. So YouTube must be beside themselves right now because they just bought the NFL, the streaming NFL package. And now you're going to have this other package that's got a significant number of the games on there.
well, I think that'll be interesting what they do because you will definitely 100% be able to buy this skinny bundle from YouTube TV. 100% because YouTube TV is essentially becoming the wireless cable for many households. So you will be able to buy this via YouTube TV. But how do they upsell you then to the NFL package? Do they bundle to some
Well,
degree?
also,
Yeah.
like for me, like for the cable subscribers, like I have all these things. I've got Fox Sports, I've got ESPN, I've got TNT and TBS, and Xfinity allows me to stream all those things, when on mobile devices. So do I need this? They're going to have to try to figure out how to sell me a way to access these games. And so the way to do it would, I think, would be able to select if I want to watch the Chicago Bulls game, can I go in there, drill down, and find the Chicago Bulls game in this package? Maybe not now, but that would be, I would think, where you'd want to go. Maybe basically like have a blending of whatever that NBA TV or whatever that package is, called, for example. That may be the way to get somebody like me to do it. Because right now, like, I don't need this. I can stream all this stuff right now.
Yeah, no, yeah, you don't need it, but it'll make it easier for you to cut the cord though in a couple years.
Yeah, but it would be more of a value if in a couple years they get to a point where I can go into this thing and select whatever team I want. I want to watch the Seattle Mariners today
I
and
think you
go to
get
this.
there. It
Yeah,
won't get there
maybe
at launch, but it'll get there.
right. I think that's phase two. Phase one is to get the cord cutters out there, which I'm an anachronism about this, like I said. There are cable subscribers, but most are not. You get that crowd, and then you work on me. And the way you do that is to open up to be able to select the game I want to watch.
Yeah, I
We
think
are
that I
the sports network of records. That's what they
yeah,
want.
I agree. I think that's where they're going.
Yep.
Some pretty fascinating stuff. Well, since this is going to go up, so you may or may not be listening to this before or after the Super Bowl, but you can listen to this before the Super Bowl. Steve, you probably said this on the hot side, but do you have a prediction?
Yeah, my prediction, I went around and around with this all week and everything, and I would love to be able to predict the 49ers because I'm sick and tired of Taylor Swift, and I can't handle another image of Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift on a field celebrating. So I'm rooting for the 49ers, but at the end of the day, I could not bet against the Chiefs. The Chiefs think it'll be a very, very close game that comes down to the end of the fourth quarter, but the Chiefs have been balling in the playoffs like they did not during the regular season. So I said Chiefs 24-20.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I am the only thing I said this earlier in the show. The only thing is the contrarian view that there's too much energy on the Chiefs makes me raise my eyebrow. But I'm going to stick to my guns. The Patrick Mahomes is an assassin. He just does not make mistakes, and he's also performs at high level, obviously. But he doesn't. His floor is so much higher than everybody else's because he
Yes.
just does not hurt himself ever. And if you watch, I mean, with most of you probably have, you watch these games. I mean, the 49ers almost puked on themselves 2 weeks in a row. And I just don't. I think the hidden weapon in this game is actually the Chiefs' defense, coupled with Mahomes' mistake-free football. I don't think what I watched of the 49ers in the playoffs can overcome that combination.
If they do, it's going to be Christian McCaffrey, because the Chiefs' run defense is kind of their the least part of their defense. And so if he can get going, then I think that's when the Niners have a chance.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? And you got to take some front end pressure off Purdy because you
Yes.
can't guarantee you're going to get fourth quarter heroics 3 games in a row from
It's a
Purdy. That's
tough
a stiff
call.
bet.
It is. So we're
All right,
both
well,
agree.
I actually going to sign. I'm going to co-sign yours. I think your score spread is pretty good
Okay.
because I agree with the football assessment. So there we go. Enjoy the Super Bowl whenever you're listening to this. I'm sure the next time we talk, there'll be some business stories that emanated from the aftermath, and so we will see you in 2 weeks.